Hello my fishes. Today we have one story with quite few updates. Title: My fiancé wants me to put his family before mine, even at the expense of my family's health. I'm a 28-year-old woman, and after 7 wonderful years together, I got engaged to my boyfriend Rob, who is 29. Our engagement in May brought immense joy to both our families, and we celebrated this new chapter in our lives with a big family dinner shortly afterwards. However, Rob's brother, who lives 250 miles away, couldn't attend due to the distance, so we scheduled another special dinner for late June when he was due to visit. This visit had been planned long before our engagement, so it was just good timing. Earlier in the year, my older sister Kim, aged 32, faced a severe medical crisis. She developed a serious eye infection that escalated quickly into an ulcer. This condition left her cornea scarred and highly vulnerable to further damage. She was slated for a corneal graft to address this issue, but her surgeon was unavailable for 4 weeks, pushing her surgery date back. Unfortunately, her condition worsened rapidly, and on the very day of our planned dinner with Rob's brother, Kim's cornea perforated. At that critical moment, Kim's wife was unreachable at work with her phone off, and our mom was on a trip with our stepdad. I was the only immediate family member available to support Kim. Realizing the urgency, I managed to leave work early to accompany her to the hospital, ensuring she wouldn't face this emergency alone. Upon arriving at the hospital, the situation was dire. Kim was surrounded by a team of medical professionals who were scrambling to manage her condition. They informed us that Kim required an emergency operation to glue her eye to prevent further damage, a procedure that needed to be done at another hospital an hour and a half away. I didn't hesitate to drive her there myself, knowing she needed me. As the reality set in that I would miss the family dinner, I sent Rob a text to explain the situation. His response, however, was far from supportive. He urged me to leave Kim at the hospital after her surgery for her wife to pick up and return to the dinner as planned. I was shocked by his lack of empathy and told him firmly that leaving Kim was not an option. Despite the tension, Rob's mother and brother were very understanding when I explained the circumstances. They reassured me that family health must come first and that the dinner could be rescheduled. Feeling supported by them, I stayed with Kim through her surgery, which thankfully was a success. I took her home around 9 p.m., and her wife had kindly ordered some Chinese food, which we shared as a small comfort after such a stressful day. By the time I got home, Rob had already gone to bed. In the following days, Rob was noticeably distant and cold, leading to a significant argument. He expressed embarrassment at having to attend the meal without me and accused me of prioritizing my sister over him and his family. I couldn't believe he would suggest that a family dinner was more important than a medical emergency. This disagreement led to a tense week until we seemingly resolved our differences. Fast forward 8 weeks, Kim successfully received her graft, and the recovery has been positive. When Rob's brother visited again, we went out for dinner with his family, who were all curious about Kim's recovery. I shared a picture of her stitches when asked, which sparked another disagreement with Rob later that evening. He criticized me for bringing up Kim's medical issues at dinner and showing the picture, despite his family's genuine concern and request to see it. Rob's insistence that his family priorities will supersede mine once we're married was the last straw for me. I packed a bag and moved to my mom's house to take some time to think. He has since been trying to contact me, but I am conflicted. I love him, but I am also deeply committed to my family and their well-being. I'm now grappling with the decision of whether our relationship can withstand these fundamental differences in family values. Update. Owning my house made the situation slightly simpler. My grandmother had passed away 5 years ago, leaving her house to my mom, who sold it and divided the proceeds between my sister and me. I used my share to buy my house about a year after her passing. The day after posting my original story, I contacted a friend of my stepdad's who happens to be a landlord. He connected me with his solicitor to discuss my options. We couldn't meet in person that day, but during a phone call, he informed me about a Section 8 notice, a 14-day eviction notice in the UK. He warned that Rob could contest it, potentially dragging us into a lengthy legal battle. Regardless, I instructed the solicitor to prepare the notice for the following day, Friday. I planned to break things off with Rob after work that day, giving him the weekend to process everything before the workweek started. On Friday, I texted Rob and asked him to meet me at our local pub after work. He agreed, likely unaware of my intentions. The pub was a strategic choice for its public setting and because my stepdad and some of his colleagues frequented it on Fridays, ensuring I had support if needed, a tip I took to heart from helpful Redditors. During my lunch break, I picked up the eviction notice, which cost £250 but felt necessary under the circumstances. When I arrived at the pub, Rob was already there. My stepdad was nearby, subtly keeping an eye on things. I sat down with Rob, skipped the pleasantries, and got straight to the point. I told him it was over, that I couldn't be with someone who lacked empathy during my sister's medical crisis and expected me to always prioritize his needs. No matter what excuses he offered, my mind was made up. Shocked, he protested, claiming I was making a huge mistake after 7 years together and that I wouldn't find anyone else like him. I countered, saying that was precisely the point. I needed someone supportive, not self-centered. I handed him an envelope containing the eviction notice and my engagement ring, telling him he had a few weeks to find a new place. Then I joined my stepdad at the bar, where he had a drink waiting for me. Rob left shortly after, still in disbelief. Later that evening, I returned to my mom's house and received a text from Rob, defiantly stating he wouldn't move out and would fight the eviction until I came to my senses. I turned off my phone, deciding to handle the legal matters on Monday. The next morning, Rob texted again, claiming he would leave if I paid him £10,000 for his share of the bills over the years. My solicitor had already assured me that I owed him nothing as his contributions were routine expenses, not investments in the property. Frustrated, I called Rob's mom, Sandra, to explain the situation. Shocked by his behavior, she promised to intervene. We met at the house while Rob was away, and Sandra was decisive. She hadn't even spoken to Rob directly but arranged for his brother to ensure he moved out by the next day. She and I went through the house together to make sure Rob wouldn't take anything that wasn't his. The following day, Rob's insults came through a text, but Sandra informed me shortly after that he had moved out. She expressed a desire to keep in touch, which I welcomed given her supportive stance. Sandra later shared distressing details about Rob's recent behavior, revealing he had reconnected with his estranged, manipulative father, which had exacerbated his worst traits. His behavior led to a falling out with his family, culminating in a confrontation where he tried to move in with his father, only to be rejected. Rob's life was unraveling, but my focus shifted to healing and spending time with my supportive family and friends. As for my sister Kim, she was recovering well, with her consultant noting excellent progress with her eye. This ordeal has brought me closer to my stepdad and reinforced my family bonds, providing a silver lining through a tumultuous time. While I'm not ready to think about dating yet, I'm optimistic about the future and grateful for the strength and support of those around me. Second update. The last I heard about Rob was from his mom, Sandra, who told me she was evicting him because she couldn't tolerate anyone in her home who was in contact with her ex-husband. Rob tried to move in with his father, but was bluntly turned away because his father refused to support him as an adult. I had completely cut off all contact with Rob, but unexpectedly, he showed up at my house yesterday. I cautiously opened the door, keeping the security chain fastened, making it clear I wouldn't let him inside. Rob looked desperate and admitted he had nowhere to live, mentioning that both his mother and father had abandoned him. He even asked if I could take him back or at least let him stay with me. Remembering the trouble I had previously in getting him out of my house, only resolved when his mom and brother intervened, I firmly told him there was no chance we would ever get back together or that he could live with me again. Rob didn't take it well, he started shouting and insulting me, so I threatened to call the police and quickly shut the door on him. I have security cameras installed around my property, so I captured his entire outburst on video and saved it to a USB drive as a precaution. Following this incident, Rob apparently complained to our mutual friends, and word got back to Sandra. She contacted me to find out what had happened, and I explained the situation. She also mentioned that she was selling her house and moving 300 miles away to be closer to her other son. This decision sparked a huge argument between her and Rob, leading to his eviction. Since then, he's been couch surfing, but with Christmas approaching, his welcome is wearing thin among friends who are focusing on their families and holiday preparations. He's been kicked out of 3 friends' homes in just 10 days. Sandra supported my decision to refuse Rob refuge, but some mutual friends have expressed sympathy for him, suggesting that I could let him stay in my spare room until he finds his footing. When I challenged these friends to host him themselves, they admitted they lacked the space but insisted they would help if they could. This has left me feeling conflicted, although my family and Sandra firmly support my stance. I find myself questioning whether I should reconsider, despite the turmoil Rob has caused. Third update. After receiving some advice, I upgraded my home security by changing the locks, updating my alarm code, and having my stepdad's friend install 4 cameras around my house. I also decided to keep the gate shut so anyone coming to the house would have to ring the bell first. In a recent update, I mentioned meeting one of Rob's friends' wives for lunch. I'll call her Nat, a 30-year-old woman, and her husband Zach, 29. I met Nat at a cafe near my work during lunch. It's a popular spot among my co-workers, and I know the staff well, which gave me a sense of security, especially since some Reddit users speculated that Rob might show up with her. Fortunately, Nat arrived alone, and after some light conversation, she shared quite a bit about what had been happening. Rob had contacted Zach last Thursday morning, desperate for a place to stay. After discussing it, Zach and Nat agreed to let him stay in their guest room temporarily. Rob claimed he had a flat lined up but couldn't move in until January. They set some ground rules for his stay, like no overnight guests and keeping quiet if he came home late, which he agreed to and even bought dinner that night as a thank you. However, the arrangement fell apart the very next day. Rob went out, met his dad for drinks, and didn't return until after Zach and Nat were asleep. They were awakened around 2 a.m. by Rob arguing loudly with a woman he'd brought home, disregarding their rules. The situation escalated quickly, and after helping the woman leave, Nat found Zach restraining Rob to prevent further confrontation. The next morning, after Nat took their daughter to her mother's, Zach told Rob to leave immediately, unable to tolerate his behavior any longer. Based on the timing, it seems Rob came straight to my house after being kicked out. Zach later met Rob to try and understand his sudden change in behavior. It turns out Rob has been under his father's influence for over 2 years. His dad espouses misogynistic views, believing men should dominate their households and make all decisions, which has significantly affected Rob's behavior. Zach pointed out that Rob's dad lives a lonely, unfulfilling life, but Rob refused to see the reality of his situation. Their conversation didn't resolve much, and Zach and Nat decided to cut ties with Rob for their family's sake. I also learned from Nat that Rob has been monitoring my Instagram through a burner account, commenting on my activities to Zach. I immediately made my account private. Hearing about Rob's actions and the influence of his father only strengthened my resolve to keep him out of my life. Although some mutual friends have suggested I let Rob stay with me, the recent incidents have only solidified my decision against it. I'll keep my distance from those friends to avoid drama but won't cut ties completely since they're part of my broader friend group. Fourth update. I've been receiving messages from people checking in on me and also some who disliked my use of initials, so for clarity, R is Rob. I had hoped there wouldn't be a need for another update, but I just received a call from one of Rob's friends that dramatically changes things. It looks like Rob will be spending Christmas in prison. Here's what happened. Rob went out with his dad on Saturday night, and things escalated to a physical altercation. Although Rob isn't typically aggressive, he is bigger and stronger than his dad, which resulted in his dad falling and hitting his head on a wall, knocking him unconscious. The pub staff immediately called the police and an ambulance. Rob fled the scene before they arrived, but his dad, who is still in the hospital with serious but non-life-threatening injuries, has pressed charges. Rob was arrested on Sunday morning at the B&B where he's been staying. At his magistrate's court appearance on Monday, he was remanded on a Section 18 charge with intent, meaning he's accused of causing grievous bodily harm with intent. Since he doesn't have a fixed address and his dad is still hospitalized, the court decided to keep him in custody until his trial at the Crown Court. His mom is over 250 miles away with his brother, so it's unlikely she'll be able to offer any immediate help. Learning about Rob's arrest has surprisingly given me a sense of peace. The worry that he might show up and disrupt our Christmas has been looming over me since he last appeared at my house. Now, it seems he'll remain in custody over the holidays, allowing me to relax a bit more. A mini update as of December 23, 2023, I visited Nat and Zach to drop off Christmas gifts and caught up over tea. They updated me that Rob's lawyer is attempting to get his charge reduced from a Section 18 with intent to a Section 20, which is less severe and could mean a 2-year suspended sentence for a first-time offender. Rob's stuff has been collected from the B&B by Zach and is stored in his garage as a final favor. Meanwhile, Rob's communication is restricted. He can't contact me unless I agree to be on his approved call list, which I won't. I also spoke to Rob's mom, who feels that spending Christmas in jail might teach Rob a necessary lesson. She mentioned that Rob is considering moving closer to his brother to escape their father's negative influence, although his brother has refused to have any contact with him currently. Rob's dad is still in the hospital after surgery for a broken hip and other injuries, which is part of why the charges against Rob are severe. Knowing Rob can't disrupt my Christmas has lifted a huge weight off my shoulders. I'm about to head to my mom's house to stay until January 2nd, but I wanted to close the year by sharing this update. Thanks to everyone who supported me through this ordeal. Merry Christmas to all who celebrate, and I hope everyone is doing well. Final update. Rob spent Christmas in remand and wasn't released until the second week of January, which only happened because his mom agreed to let him stay with her. Rob's legal proceedings continued, and he had his plea hearing in the first week of February, where he pleaded guilty to a Section 20 assault. The sentencing wasn't scheduled until last week, which was a more involved process than I expected. They needed a victim impact statement, a pre-sentencing report from probation, and statements from his family. His barrister even contacted me to provide a statement about our breakup and his eviction from my house. During sentencing, Rob cited our breakup and the resultant loss of his home as factors that severely impacted his mental health. He also claimed to have PTSD from living in an abusive home as a child. These factors were considered by the judge, who reduced his potential 3-year sentence to 16 months, suspended for 18 months, due to his guilty plea and these mitigating circumstances. As part of his release conditions, Rob must avoid any contact with his father, attend counseling for his PTSD, and abstain from alcohol. He wears an ankle monitor that checks for alcohol consumption every half hour. He's also been relocated by his employer to their main office in the city, half an hour away, and he moved into a flat there this week, which means I don't have to worry about running into him. I haven't had any direct contact with Rob, nor do I wish to, although he's tried to reach out through friends who have respected my decision and advised him to move on. However, I spoke to his mom recently, who informed me that while he seems to be managing, she suspects he's quite depressed. It's been a whirlwind year since our engagement, feeling a strange mix of emotions toward him. While there's some lingering care, it's not enough to want him back in my life. It's clear I need to keep him at a distance, as I can't see him in the same light as before. Aside from this, I'm doing well. I've been spending more time with my sister and her wife, as well as catching up with friends. I'm still at the same job, and that's not likely to change soon. For those asking about my sister, she's doing better after a recent setback and has been approved for a new stem cell treatment at the UK's largest eye hospital. The treatment involves using her blood in her eye, which is a bit too graphic for me, but she loves to share the gory details. Sibling dynamics never change. So, it seems we're all moving forward. This will likely be my last post unless something significant happens. I want to thank everyone for their support and kind words throughout this journey. This experience has restored my faith in the goodness of people.